The live stream chat was a blur of emojis and chaos. And I was laughing so hard I nearly fell off my chair. Okay. You guys win, I shouted, glancing at the laptop screen where hundreds of viewers egged me on. It was April Fool's Day, and my roommate Ethan and I were in the middle of our weekly gaming stream, where our fans love to push us into ridiculous dares. Tonight, they'd gone feral, demanding I confess my undying love to Ethan as a prank. Ethan, sprawled on the couch beside me in our tiny Brooklyn apartment, was grinning like he knew something I didn't. His hazel eyes sparkled under the fairy lights we'd strung up for the stream, and his messy blonde hair caught the glow in a way that made my chest tighten for reasons I refused to unpack. All right, fine, I said, turning to him with exaggerated drama. Ethan, I'm in love with you. Marry me, you idiot. The chat exploded heart emojis. Oh my God. And finally flooded the screen. I expected Ethan to laugh, maybe punch my shoulder and call me a dork like he always did. Instead, he went still, his grin fading into something softer, something that made my pulse race. Jake, he said, his voice low, almost drowned out by the ping of notifications. You mean that? I froze. The room felt too small, the air too thick. The chat was still screaming, but it was like the world narrowed to just us, me, Jake Carter, the guy who hid behind sarcasm, and Ethan Hayes, my best friend since college, who was looking at me like I'd just handed him the moon. It's April Fool's. Man, I stammered, my face burning. I glanced at the screen, hoping to deflect, but Ethan leaned closer, his knee brushing mine. Jake, he said again, and this time his voice was steady, deliberate. If you're joking, that's cool. But if you're not, he paused, his gaze locking onto mine, and my heart stopped. I'd say yes. The chat lost its collective mind. I couldn't breathe. Ethan's hand found mine, warm and steady, and before I could process what was happening, he leaned in and kissed me. Right there. On live stream. His lips were soft, hesitant at first, then sure, like he'd been waiting for this moment forever. The world tilted, and for a second, I forgot the hundreds of people watching, the blinking lights of our setup, the cluttered apartment around us. It was just Ethan, tasting like coffee and courage, and me, falling into something I didn't even know I wanted. When he pulled back, his cheeks were pink, but his smile was pure Ethan Bold, unapologetic. So, he said, loud enough for the mic to catch, you gonna take that back? Or are we doing this for real? The chat was a wildfire of caps-locked screams, but I couldn't look away from him. My brain scrambled for a response, but all I could think was how I'd spent 3 years living with this guy, sharing late-night pizza and bad movie marathons, and never once let myself admit how much he meant to me. I need a minute, I managed, my voice cracking. The viewers ate it up, spamming "kiss him again" and "Jake's in love." Ethan just chuckled, leaning back like he hadn't just turned my world upside down. Dude, you can't just, I started. But he cut me off with a raised eyebrow. Can't what? Call your bluff. He smirked, but there was something vulnerable in his eyes, like he was waiting for me to break his heart. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long convincing myself I was fine with just being roommates, just being friends. Ethan was the outgoing one, The guy who lit up every room. Who made our streams a hit with his charm and quick wit. I was the awkward one. The guy who hid behind jokes and never let anyone too close. But now, with his kiss still burning on my lips and the whole internet watching, I couldn't hide anymore. The rest of the stream was a blur. We laughed it off, played a few more rounds of our game, and signed off with our usual banter. But the air between us crackled with something new. After we shut down the laptop, Ethan turned to me, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "So," he said, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Was that really just a prank?" My mouth went dry. I wanted to say yes, to retreat to the safety of our old dynamic. But the truth was clawing its way out. I don't know," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "I didn't mean for it to be real. But, he prompted, stepping closer. His voice was gentle, but there was an edge to it, like he was bracing for rejection. "I don't know what I'm doing, Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've never thought about us like that. Not out loud." He nodded, like he'd expected that. "Fair enough. But you should know. I've thought about it. A lot." My heart did a weird flip. "You? What?" Ethan laughed. A little nervous. A little sad. "Come on, Jake. You think I'd kiss you on a whim? I've been into you since sophomore year. I just figured you weren't interested." I stared at him, my brain short-circuiting. Sophomore year. That was when we'd met. When we'd bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared hatred of our psych professor. All this time, he'd been carrying this, and I'd been too oblivious to scared to see it. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He shrugged, looking away. "Didn't want to ruin what we had. You're my best friend, Jake. I'd rather have you as that than lose you by pushing for more." The weight of his words hit me like a truck. I'd spent so long building walls, convincing myself I didn't need anyone, that I'd missed what was right in front of me. Ethan wasn't just my roommate or my streaming partner. He was the guy who made me laugh when I was drowning in deadlines, who stayed up with me when I couldn't sleep, who knew exactly how I took my coffee. "I'm an idiot," I said finally, and he laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "Yeah, but you're my idiot," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "So, what now? You want to pretend this never happened?" Or, I didn't let him finish. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us, and kissed him. It was clumsy, desperate, nothing like the smooth moment on the stream. But it was real. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer. And for the first time in years, I let myself feel everything I'd been running from. When we broke apart, I was shaking, but I couldn't stop smiling. "Okay," I said, breathless. Let's figure this out. Together." Ethan's grin was brighter than the New York skyline. "Deal. But you're going to have to explain this to the fans tomorrow. They're already planning our wedding." I groaned, but my heart was racing. And not just from embarrassment. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future where I didn't have to hide, where I could be honest about who I was and who I loved. The next morning, our apartment felt different, like the air itself was charged with possibility. I woke up to the smell of Ethan's terrible instant coffee and the sound of him humming off-key in the kitchen. For a second, I could pretend nothing had changed until I remembered the kiss, the live stream, and the thousands of people who'd seen it. I stumbled out of my room, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and found Ethan at the stove, flipping pancakes like he hadn't just rewritten our entire relationship. "Morning, superstar," he said, tossing me a grin over his shoulder. "Ready to face the internet?" I groaned, collapsing into a chair. "They're gonna eat us alive, aren't they?" "Oh, absolutely." He slid a plate of slightly burned pancakes in front of me. "Check Twitter. We're trending." I grabbed my phone, heart sinking as I opened the app. Sure enough, Jake and Ethan was everywhere, along with clips of the kiss and fan art that ranged from adorable to wildly inappropriate. "This is a nightmare," I muttered, scrolling through a thread of fans debating whether we were in-game or just trolling. Ethan sat across from me, sipping his coffee. "Or it's kinda cool. People are rooting for us." I looked up, caught off guard by the warmth in his voice. "You're way too calm about this." He shrugged, but his eyes were serious. "I've had years to get used to the idea of us. You're the one playing catch-up." That hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so long avoiding my feelings, convincing myself I was fine alone, that I hadn't considered how much courage it took for Ethan to lay his heart bare. On Livestream, no less. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, for not seeing it sooner. Ethan's expression softened. "You don't owe me an apology, Jake. You're here now. That's what matters." We ate in silence for a while, the weight of last night settling between us. I wanted to say more, to tell him how scared I was of screwing this up, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I reached for his hand across the table, and he squeezed mine back, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a way that made my heart stutter. The day passed in a blur of normalcy and nervous energy. We avoided the internet, focusing on mundane stuff like laundry and dishes. But every glance, every casual touch felt electric. By evening, we couldn't dodge the inevitable, had to address the fans. We set up the stream like always. But this time, my stomach was in knots. Ethan, of course, was his usual charming self, waving at the camera and cracking jokes as the viewer count climbed. "All right, folks," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You've got questions. We've got some answers." The chat erupted with demands for details. Were we dating? Was the kiss real? Was it all a prank? I wanted to sink into the floor, but Ethan's steady presence beside me kept me grounded. "So," I started, my voice shakier than I'd like. "Last night was unexpected." Understatement of the century. The chat spammed laughing emojis, but Ethan just grinned, nudging my shoulder. "Go on. Tell him." I took a deep breath. It started as a joke. "You guys know I'm an idiot who can't back down from a dare." But I glanced at Ethan, his eyes warm and encouraging. "It's not a joke anymore. We're figuring it out." The chat went wild, but Ethan's smile was all I could see. He leaned in, resting his chin on his hand like he was studying me. "For the record," he said, loud enough for the mic, "I meant every word." "And the kiss." My face burned, but I couldn't help laughing. "You're gonna kill me, man." The stream went better than I expected. Our fans were mostly supportive, though some were skeptical, and a few were outright cruel. Ethan handled it like a pro, deflecting hate with humor. But I saw the way his jaw tightened at the worst comments. It made me want to protect him, to shield him from the world's judgment. After we signed off, I turned to him. "You okay?" Some of those comments were rough. He shrugged, but his smile was strained. "I'm used to it. Not everyone's going to be happy about us." That "us" hit me like a freight train. It was real now. No going back. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want to. Over the next few days, we fell into a new rhythm. Stolen kisses in the kitchen. Late-night talks about everything and nothing. Hands brushing as we passed each other in our cramped apartment. But the outside world wasn't as kind. The internet was a mixed bag. Some fans shipped us harder than ever, but others called us sellouts, fakers, or worse. My parents, who I hadn't spoken to in months, left a voicemail asking if the rumors were true. Ethan's mom, on the other hand, texted him a string of heart emojis and an invite to Sunday dinner. One night, as we lay on the couch watching some terrible sci-fi movie, Ethan turned to me, his head resting on my shoulder. "You ever think about what this means? For real?" I tensed, my old instinct to deflect kicking in. "What? Like, forever?" He laughed, but it was soft, almost sad. "Not forever. Just now. Being out. Being us." I swallowed hard. I'd never been out before. Not like this. I'd dated a few guys in secret. Always keeping it casual. Always keeping it hidden. But with Ethan, there was no hiding. Not after the live stream. It's scary, I admitted. But it's worth it. You're worth it. He looked up at me, his eyes shining. "You mean that?" I kissed him, slow and deliberate, letting the answer sink in. "Yeah, I do." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of highs and lows. Ethan and I were closer than ever, navigating this new territory with a mix of excitement and fear. Our streams were more popular than ever, but the pressure was intense. Every joke, every touch was analyzed, dissected, turned into memes or hate threads. I tried to focus on the good, on Ethan's laugh, on the way he looked at me like I was enough, but the noise was hard to ignore. One evening, as we walked home from a diner in Williamsburg, a group of guys shouted slurs from across the street. Ethan's hand tightened in mine, but he kept walking, head high. I wanted to scream, to fight, but his steady grip kept me grounded. "They're not worth it," he said quietly when we reached our building. "But it still sucks." I pulled him into a hug, right there on the stoop, not caring who saw. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know it'd be like this." He pulled back, his eyes fierce. "Don't be sorry. I chose this. I chose you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how easy it had been to hide before, to keep my feelings locked away. Ethan had always been braver than me, unafraid to be himself, even when it hurt. I wanted to be that brave for him, for us. The turning point came a month later, at a local gaming convention where we'd been invited to host a panel. The room was packed, fans cheering as we took the stage. I was nervous, my palms sweaty, but Ethan was in his element, charming the crowd with ease. The Q&A started innocently enough questions about our favorite games, our streaming setup. Then someone asked, "So, are you guys really together? Or was that kiss just for clout?" The room went quiet. I felt the weight of every eye on us. The judgment. The curiosity. My instinct was to laugh it off, to retreat. But Ethan reached for my hand under the table, his thumb brushing over mine. "It's real," he said, his voice clear and steady. "And I wouldn't trade it for anything." The crowd erupted in cheers, but my throat was tight. I looked at him, at the boy who'd turned my world upside down with a single kiss. And I knew I couldn't hide anymore. "Me neither," I said, my voice shaking but sure. "I love him." The room exploded again, and Ethan's grin was brighter than the stage lights. He leaned over, kissing my cheek, and the crowd lost it. For once, I didn't care about the cameras, the fans, the haters. I just cared about him. After the panel, we slipped backstage, and Ethan pulled me into a corner, his hands cupping my face. "You didn't have to do that," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm so glad you did." "I meant it," I said, my heart pounding. "I'm done running. I want Thesis for real." He kissed me, deep and fierce, and it felt like a promise. Not just to each other, but to ourselves. To live honestly, no matter what the world threw at us. The months that followed weren't easy. We lost some fans, faced more hate online, and I had a painful call with my parents, who didn't understand but promised to try. But we also gained so much support from fans who saw themselves in us. Invitations to speak at events. Even a message from a kid who said our story gave him the courage to come out to his family. One night, as we sat on our tiny balcony overlooking the city, Ethan handed me a coffee mug, his fingers lingering on mine. "You ever think about where we'll be in a year?" he asked. I looked at him, at the boy who'd started as a prank and ended as my everything. "As long as I'm with you, I don't care." He smiled, leaning his head on my shoulder. "Good answer." The city hummed below us, alive with possibility. We weren't perfect, and the world wasn't either. But we had each other. And that was enough.